And when I started using Tailwind and class names instead, it was painful. I talk a lot about how much I love Tailwind on this channel. What I don't talk enough about is how I got here in the first place, and more importantly, how I actually hated Tailwind when I first saw it and started using it. I don't think my experience here is particularly unique, but I do think it might be insightful, so I figured, why not talk about my Tailwind journey? The goal of this video is less to convince you of specific implementation details of Tailwind, more to show you what it looks like to challenge your own beliefs and understandings of things and pick up new technologies that might solve problems in ways that don't initially align with your own understanding. Tailwind made me a better developer, and I think the story is worth sharing. So, how did I get into Tailwind initially? I had somewhat recently started at a new startup, and I was in charge of building the web app. Notably, the web app, not the website. They had hired an external contracting firm to build the website. That website was used for the marketing, the email list, and eventually it was going to be used for the blog. Sadly, that contracting firm was no longer working with the company, so the code kind of became my problem. Not only was this my first experience with Tailwind, it was also my first experience with Next.js. To be fair, it's actually really cool that a contracting firm picked Next.js and Tailwind all the way back in early 2021 to solve problems for building a marketing site. Funny enough, I was actually deep on Snowpack at this point. I moved to Vite when that whole moment occurred, but generally speaking, I was not into Next yet, much less into Tailwind. This is a huge part of why I generally avoided working on that site and focused on the web app that I built with Snowpack. Eventually, though, we wanted a blog for that marketing site, and since that contracting firm wasn't working with us, it became my problem. I'm also very opinionated about blogs and typography and a lot of those things. I'm not good at it, but I care a lot about it and getting it right. And as I started looking into how to do this with Tailwind, I quickly found the package Tailwind Typography. And man, this package blew me away. Before, I was thinking of Tailwind mostly as like a bootstrap thing with worse syntax and uglier HTML. But when I saw Tailwind Typography, it became clear to me that these people understand good styles and style solutions. When I saw how good all of the blogs using Tailwind Typography looked and how, generally speaking, it just kind of did the right thing, I had to know more. So I started playing with Tailwind a bit more and taking it seriously. I adopted it in another project I was working on the side that eventually became my startup thing. Previously, I was using a bunch of crazy styled component stuff, and when I started using Tailwind and class names instead, it was painful. It took me a bit to know which class applied to which thing, and reading through the docs gave me a lot of context, but it didn't give me a quick solution to the problems I was having as I had them. The IntelliSense in VS Code helped, but not quite as much as I needed. When I discovered the Tailwind cheat sheet, things started to change for me fast. I already knew CSS. I wasn't great at CSS. I'd put myself at like a 5 or a 6 out of 10 maybe, but I knew it enough to be frustrated when I couldn't find the class I needed to do the thing I wanted to do. And when I had a cheat sheet that would get me there much quicker, I was able to pick up the core syntax relatively fast. At that point, I moved back to the docs, and man, they were way more useful at that point. On top of being a good resource for how Tailwind behaves and makes decisions, it was also a really insightful way for me to better my own CSS knowledge. Eventually, I ended up buying the book Refactoring UI by the Tailwind authors, and man, it helped me a ton with how I do styling and think of user interfaces. Tailwind went from being an ugly syntax that I hated looking at and working with to one of the best solutions I've picked up. It challenged me to rethink my understanding of what good style solutions were, which, to be frank, a good style solution at the time was something that was really far away from my JSX, because I wanted my JSX to be pure and clean and the HTML that came out to be the same. What I learned quickly with Tailwind is the power of co-location. It wasn't just writing the component the first time that was easier, it was the maintenance over time that really sold me. When I went back to components that I hadn't touched for like a year plus, and I could quickly find the exact thing causing the style I didn't like and make changes and adjustments really fast. On top of that, the prettier Tailwind plugin came out, and man, having a reliable sort order that guarantees the class names are in a consistent order made both code review and maintenance significantly easier. I really didn't expect Tailwind to be so much more maintainable, and it's weird saying it still, because it seems so chaotic when you look at the HTML. There are so many things you don't realize you deal with when you're working with traditional CSS or even something like Sass or styled components. Even something as simple as having to come up with a name for every element has resulted in chaos like the BEM naming methods that are, to be frank, obnoxious. As soon as you can remove all of that cruft and not think about it, you suddenly start to move a lot faster. To me, this kind of felt like the React moment. Before React, the community generally believed that model view controller separation was necessary to build good maintainable user interfaces. React challenged that at a core fundamental level, suggesting that this abstraction was just something we made up. And on the web, co-location and separation of concerns should be defined by the developer in what their application needs. That allowed us to move so much faster, build reusable pieces, and generally form the ecosystem we now have in React. I really didn't think Tailwind would be the same because it was just ugly class names inside of my HTML. But man, I was so wrong in this regard. I haven't talked about Shad UI anywhere near enough on this channel yet. I'm hoping to more in the near future. TLDR, it's a website full of reusable components built in Tailwind and Radix that you can copy paste and drop in your code base, as well as using their CLI to set them up. The goal wasn't to make something like Material UI that you just npm install and trust their components. It was to give you the source code so you could change and adjust to be exactly how you need it. It's so well loved that Vercel just hired the creator to work on it full-time at Vercel. It's so cool, beyond belief cool. I'm genuinely hyped to see Shad's success, and it shows that Tailwind isn't just another one of those weird bootstrappy libraries. This also isn't meant to throw shade at Bootstrap. It was a very valuable solution for developers like me especially that came from backend and didn't want to think about CSS for a long time. My own journey was that of a backend engineer begrudgingly going to front end, getting good enough at styled components in modern CSS and Sass to tolerate it, but never really falling in love with it, just kind of dealing with it, rotating style solutions every 3 to 6 months, using Tailwind because someone else used it, not liking it at first, and then ending up loving it so much that people now associate me with Tailwind and front end as a whole. To be frank, I don't know if I would be seen as a front end engineer if it wasn't for Tailwind getting me so excited about building good user interfaces again. I probably owe it a lot of the reason I started doing YouTube in the first place. I wanted to talk about the tools I loved, and Tailwind really kicked me back into gear, getting excited about something I never cared about before, CSS. So if you haven't tried Tailwind yet, why? What's your holdback? I know I was holding off for quite a while, and it might seem silly now because it's been 2 years, but yeah, in 2021, Tailwind was catching on pretty fast, and I took my time with it. So why haven't you given it a shot? Let me know why in the comments. And if you want to hear more about how to find success with Tailwind early on, I'll put a video here in the corner all about it. Thank you guys as always. Hope you enjoyed my Tailwind journey. Peace, nerds.